Good morning from the LatAm Tech Forum in Miami. Latin America's tech sector has been on a roll over the past few years, producing some extraordinary world-class companies, attracting investors from all over the globe. The environment now has become a little more challenging as capital has become more scarce and more expensive. And we're wondering how the region's companies, how its emerging tech sector is going to cope in this new and more challenging environment. And to discuss this and other topics, I'm joined by Francisco Alvarez from Riverwood Capital, one of the region's biggest investors. Francisco is a veteran of the scene, having co-founded Riverwood back in 2008, had long experience, taken some of the companies right through the cycle. So we're going to discuss together how Latin America's tech sector is navigating this different environment and some of the lessons it can offer for the rest of the world. Francisco, thank you very much for joining me this morning.
Hi, Michael. Thank you. It's a pleasure being here.
It's good to have you with us. Tell us, let's go right back to the beginning to start. Tell us what brought you into the tech sector originally back in 2008 and why you thought Latin America was a good place to invest.
Yeah, so from the beginning, when we started our firm, and our purpose is to invest in technology companies that are at the right moment of scalability. So mid-sized companies, small but already at the scale and have a good size, and that we can provide capital and support, help to really take those companies to a much bigger chapter, to help on the scalability. And from the beginning, we realized that all this technology adoption that we have been seeing over the last decade plus, it's really a global phenomenon. So you see the impact of technology in terms of consumer markets, B2B markets in the US, in Europe, in Asia, and of course in Latin America. And we thought that the region had a great opportunity for development. It's a region with over 600 million people. That population was going to get connected as connectivity drives usage of more technology. That was going to create a lot of opportunity for, we can call it consumer technology or different type of technology applied to.
And a region with huge problems, right? Huge social problems, huge economic problems.
And there was a lot to solve using technology.
And it spawned some genuinely adaptive and innovative companies, right? The LatAm tech sector. Give us some examples of some of the ones you think are the most innovative and interesting.
Yeah, well, look, I think there's a lot of them and there's a lot of sectors. What I could say of the last years, what's been happening, and we went through phases in our investments. We've done things in technology infrastructure, in consumer tech, a lot in B2B, and that B2B space is what gets me more excited. And what I mean by that is software is really getting adopted in Latin America, and we have been investing in companies that not only are building software for local companies in Brazil, all across Latin America, but also that are building software now that can be used globally. And these companies can really win on a global basis. Right. So the whole innovation of the region is not only applied to the region, but also it's becoming a contender on a global basis, which is pretty crazy. Give you examples. We have a company called Vitex, which provides software for e-commerce for you to be able to sell online with a next-gen platform that allows you to do that across multiple channels, not only with your website, but integrated to marketplaces, integrated with other partners, because commerce is getting interconnected. So you need not just to be able to sell yourself with your own assets or digital assets, but you gotta start to connect your inventory and your clients with multiple partners and providers. And that interconnectivity, you really need a platform that allows you to do that. And Vitex is an example of that. And it's innovating from Brazil. Brazil is actually pretty sophisticated on e-commerce. I would say one of the most sophisticated markets globally because of the complexity of Brazil. Is very complex from day one. There's not only two carriers or, there's a lot of taxes, there's a lot of complexity. So a company that was able to build a good product for such a complex market then is fully ready to then drive with the increased complexity that you see in more developed markets. So that's kind of the journey of that company. And like that, we have multiple examples that we can talk about.
So we've got Latin American tech companies helping solve global problems and proving successful outside Latin America as well as in the region.
Yeah, it's incredible to see. Again, it's not only the local opportunity and this huge market, but also this talent and these companies being able to compete on a global basis. Another example, a company called Globant that started actually out of Argentina, and we invested in the company a long time ago. I've been on the board of that company for a long time, and the business was able to start from Latin America, serve clients in the UK, then some clients in the US, and then every single year expanding towards now becoming one of the top companies in the world in terms of offering software services for emerging technologies. So we are on the forefront of AI, for example. We were at the forefront of all the mobile wave 10 years ago. We then went into being a key partner to some of the largest brands in terms of leveraging new technologies to interconnect with consumers. And that business is literally a global reference in terms of new technologies.
And as you mentioned, I mean, Latin America sometimes is a challenging environment for businesses. Governments don't always help. Sometimes they do. And one of the surprising success stories has been Uruguay, hasn't it? Which is a small country, but it's developed a very vibrant and successful tech sector. What do you think are the lessons that Uruguay has for other countries in how to foster a successful tech industry?
Yeah, look, I mean, technology is a global industry. And then when you look at the different subsectors within tech, some sectors are more global. Some businesses really become a global business. If you're talking about a social network, for example, that's literally a global business with no country barriers. And then you have on the other extreme, let's call it the tax software. That is a pretty local, customized business. But in general, when you build good technology products and services, as a company, you can offer that across multiple geographies, multiple regions. So what happens in a way, and I've been talking about this for some time, is like I feel like when you live in this technology industry, the barriers, the country borders start to become less relevant. You just to operate in a way where you can really serve and do things across countries, across borders. So the idea of governments and that tension, it's pretty interesting. At the end, if you want to promote in your own country or geography the development of the industry, I would say the first lesson is try not to prevent rational business building.
Do no harm.
Do no harm. Allow companies to be able to hire good talent, to nurture that talent, and if the talent is not the right fit, to move on. Sometimes you gotta cut headcount or make layoff or hire some other people. So the more you allow for a normal business-friendly context, the more you're going to have value creation and talent being able, or companies being able to hire and nurture that talent so you can really expand globally.
So talking of talent,
and countries that understand, that at the end it's more about having the talent, that innovation within your country, and then of course you will be able to apply it to businesses in your country. But a lot of these companies actually operate from multiple countries. We have our businesses, we have engineers in some companies in like 25 countries, and they are all working towards one product that then sells into several countries. So it's understanding how this business works, and sometimes I think there's a little bit of a disconnect between how business works and how governments think.
And thinking of talent, I mean, is there enough talent in the region? Is there enough in the way of software engineers coming through the system? Is the region producing enough of that talent, or is that a bottleneck?
It is a bottleneck. There's never enough talent, I would say, in software globally. India has done an amazing job on setting up and building a very strong educational system. But in general, and in Latin America in particular, it's really, there is a lack of talent. If you want to, get a good job in Latin America, I guess, my advice to people would be, just go and, study anything related to tech, software development, coding, digital marketing, because there is an untapped opportunity there. That's another disconnect, by the way, in general with the business sector and governments, where I think some officials understand this, but at the same time, and not to, it's tough also, I understand it, even though I was never in government, how to effect change. But at the end, the educational system is a little bit disconnected with what the market needs. So there's a lot of opportunity on that front.
Okay, so talent, one issue. Capital, of course, is the other big issue. And capital, a shortage of capital, had held back a little the tech sector in Latin America earlier on in the cycle. Then we got some big investments, some of the big global names came in. And of course, now we're in a more challenging, more difficult environment. So tell us a little bit about how that's changed your philosophy, your strategy at Riverwood, how you're coping with this more difficult, scarce capital environment, higher cost of capital. what it's
Yeah,
doing for
it's
the
a
sector?
good question. And I think, look, in the technology sector, not only us and entrepreneurs, we all talk about the cycles. And at the end, we define how technology is doing based on the capital market cycle, IPOs or investments and those type of headlines. I think about it a little bit different. To me, and to make it simple, I would split it in two aspects. One is the technology opportunity by itself, which is building companies, providing services, getting more revenues, providing more product. Another one is this capital markets flow. From the perspective of technology development, I am not seeing any slowdown. The opportunity of technology growth, penetration, services, when you look at most of the stats, if you look at all the sectors, continues to be extremely strong. I give you examples. We have a company called Doc. We are investors in that company that provides fintech infrastructure for clients to be able to launch, digital accounts, wallets, credit cards, etc. This company was serving, some clients. Our clients have around, I think, 2-3 million accounts 6 years ago, and today we're operating 75 million accounts. So we went from 2 or 3 million to 75 million in the last 7 years, and it continues. Why? Because digitalization of financial services doesn't stop. It didn't stop last year, doesn't stop this year. It continues. So then this whole capital markets debate is more about the dynamics of macro and where the money flows and more capital market cycles. So from that perspective, yes, the Fed and other central bankers, we were talking about it earlier, started to increase rates. Some of them probably too late, and because they had to contain inflation. And as that happened, cost of capital became more expensive. So of course, that created a whole reduction in liquidity. So we're now going through that correction in the capital market cycle. The correction that we're seeing is twofold. One is now it's multiples are lower or valuations are lower, just because capital has a higher cost. The second correction is also when capital was excessive, or there was more capital than today, there was more risk taking beyond valuation, just more projects, things, more excesses. We went into a phase probably where I called it the momentum flywheel, where you can just raise more money to do things. Maybe those things were not adding too much value to any client, but there was just in that wave of raising money. So now it's very tough to do that. Now it's like if there is capital, it's more expensive, and that capital gets allocated to businesses and things and projects that have a real tangible return and also like opportunity, and the return correlates to providing a service or a product. So we are in that part of the cycle. I actually think it's natural when I look at the market today from the perspective of investments and capital availability, even though we are in a much weaker moment than 2021, the region by itself, it is in a much better place than 6, 7, 8 years ago. So to me, it's just part of the natural evolution. It never goes linear. It goes into cycles and corrections, but I'm pretty optimistic that capital will continue to support technology companies that provide a real, tangible, good service and product.
And are we seeing a wave of consolidation, M&A within the sector as a result of this tighter capital?
Yes. I think we went through a period after 21, first correction. It almost goes into this cycle of, something happens, the public markets correct faster because it's just natural. People buy and sell stocks every day. Then you have that dynamic on the private markets that take more time, so people reassess. And then naturally, what companies did is, first of all, activity came down because, I like saying the buyer in 2022, the buyers were looking at 23, and the sellers were looking at 21, right? So you had that disconnect of, the 2022 new chapter. So you had less activity. And then most companies then also realize, wow, now capital is more scarce. So if I was doing a lot of things and probably investing a lot of capital for things that might give me a return at some time, they just started to become more efficient. So the things that probably didn't make sense, it push everybody to be more rational. That's pretty healthy. And then second, it also push everybody to invest less. That's just a question of, capital availability. So we're now getting out of that moment where
Do you think it was an overcorrection?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think it's natural. I think it correlates again with interest rates, but I think it's a healthy, natural process.
And do you think Latin American entrepreneurs and business owners are particularly well equipped to deal with a high inflation environment with less capital availability because of the experience of the region earlier in the century?
Yes, look, I sometimes when we talk with founders, and sometimes I tell them that I get questions about, hey, how can our Latin America portfolio can deal with inflation, or we also got the question about instability in the financial system that we have seen in the last few months, and I always answer something similar, which is, look, in Latin America we were born with inflation and instability, crisis, volatility, headlines. Every week something changes. So I think I'm a big believer that Latin American entrepreneurs have one advantage, which is to be able to develop business, to understand context where things are volatile, where you're used to swing changes. It pushes you to really more focus on your core, to know what you're doing, and to be able to react quickly, to pivot to the context.
So and to have creative solutions, right? Come up 100%, with creative solutions.
Very creative, fast moving. Also, your teams understand that. That there's less inertia in Latin American companies, and I think that's an advantage in a global market that is becoming, if you look at where we are, pretty volatile, and you have to move fast and you have to react.
And if we think by sector, where do you think the best opportunities are at the moment in Latin American tech?
Yeah, it's a good question. Look, I think when I think about it from the perspective of industries, almost every industry, it's really getting impacted by technology and digitalization. Big areas, of course, are financial services with all the, let's call it fintech adoption. Of course, consumer markets, from retail to consumer brands, to how even companies operate. And every other sector. One of the things that I'm seeing is Latin America was known, or in particular some countries, for agriculture, for energy. And then when I think about the region today and I think about the future, I think all this technology opportunity and some leapfrog in technology that is happening is really creating a new wave of economic development, of new sectors that are really vibrant and are creating opportunity for people. When I think about from technology trends, more that are more horizontal, that touch almost all of this technology development, clearly the most exciting part, and I alluded to it earlier, is all that we're seeing in B2B and software.
Right.
I think Latin America talent got into tech, then after getting into tech, it really got more sophisticated, and now when I look at the region, compared to Silicon Valley, compared to other regions, talent is able to build high quality, world-class products. And that is allowing Latin American companies, as I said earlier, software companies, which is high tech, innovative, pretty special, to build great product. It's great product that I'm seeing in LatAm, and great product that I'm seeing being able to not only sell in LatAm, but sell internationally. So I'm very optimistic about that software opportunity out of Latin America. And of course, artificial intelligence helps on that development, because these platforms are becoming more and more interesting and can do much more.
And so, last question, just thinking globally. I mean, Latin America over the past sort of couple of decades has lost out a little to Asia, particularly East Asia, in economic development, and was also slower in tech than East Asia. Do you see Latin America catching up over the next decade with East Asia? And what do you think the region needs to do to catch up with the leaders globally in tech?
Yeah, it's a broad question. It's a difficult question in the sense because it encompasses a lot of different dynamics. I heard this phrase, which I love, when people compare Latin America with Asia, with sometimes, and it's from a Latin America author that he mentions, sometimes I feel that Asia is looking at the future and Latin America is looking at the past, more culturally, in terms of how we think and emotion and dynamics and all that. And I think a little bit of that is, there's a lot of romanticism in Latin America. So sometimes
I blame the Europeans for that.
Exactly.
Well, it's the thinking of Europe, the past, and so
we can talk about it.
Yeah.
So I think on economic development, it goes much beyond technology. Of course, it's politics, it's culture, it's a lot of different things. And one thing that I believe is that, and I leave aside the comparison on politics and culture and dynamics,
Sure.
which is a more complex topic. But in technology, I'm very, very bullish on when I think about the opportunity. It's not just about penetrating what already exists in terms of getting technology adoption into these consumer markets or these, financial services, etc. But it's also about all the new economic wave of development that technology is creating. So you are creating new economies. And when I see the size of the region with over 600 million people, and I see that people getting access to all these opportunities, I'm very optimistic that we're creating a new wave of economic development where these people are now becoming merchants, they're becoming independent contractors, they're becoming part of the economy in different jobs. And that to me makes me pretty exciting, which in a way catches up with a lot of the growth that we have seen in Asia in terms of raising a lot of the lower class into the middle class into getting good jobs. So in general, I believe that Latin America has a good chance to catch up. It's tough for me to compare because there's a lot of other things going on beyond technology.
But that seems a good place to leave it. So, Francisco Alvarez, thank you very much for sharing that experience with me. It's good to know that Latin America is in good shape to use its tech sector to drive faster economic development in the future and to produce along the way some creative solutions to problems, not just in the region, but also global problems. So, Francisco, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you very much.